Who would be a Wolves fan, eh?
On goes Bull. Speedball might yet win it here for Wolves. Blasting the shot. What a goal!
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Wolves Fancast, part of the 90min Football Network. Rich Hobbs joining you to discuss the 1-1 draw against Brentford. Joining me today, we've got Matt, we've got Kim, and we've got Michael as well. Michael, great to have you on. I was gonna say, give us a breakdown, give us a plug for your show as much as anything else.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. It's one of the first Wolves-related things I do, but I do the audio description commentary with Matt for Wolves. I'm a sort of long-distance, but also long-term Wolves supporter. And yeah, I do a European football podcast, which is at RTN Football on Twitter, and Road to Nowhere European Football Podcast on all usual Spotify or streaming services.
All places where you can find. That's exactly what we like to hear. I was going to say, long distance, long suffering Wolves fan, long term, long suffering. Exactly like what we want to hear from a fan. We've all been there. Let's get into the bones of it. Wolves managed to not lose a game, guys. Who'd have thought it? I know, get out of the bubbly. No, but we did draw 1-1 against Brentford. Well, it wasn't the most inspiring of games, but in a way, it kind of needed to be like that, just to make sure that we were getting points on the board. I was going to say, Kim, I know you went down to Brentford yesterday. How did you find going to the Meccano Stadium?
All round pretty bizarre experience, actually, which I think is pretty much similar to most sort of fans' experiences in the past. Yeah, I think it's just a bizarre ground. I mean, you've got these sort of like screens like above you that have got sort of action replays, and then you find yourself just like watching the screen instead of like actually watching the game. And then it's like, well, why am I even here if I'm just sort of like watching it on the TV? I might as well be sitting at home. And then that obviously for their goal, you saw the replays, and then for our goal, it's like, really want a replay of Neves' sort of brilliant shot from outside the box, and there was no replay. So obviously that was a bit annoying. But I think generally, yeah, it's just a weird ground that's almost like Lego looking. It doesn't even look real.
Is it because driving over it on like the A roads and the motorway, it doesn't look like there's an inch that they could have made it any bigger around kind of where it's Is it what's it like? It looks proper congested from the outside.
It is, and you almost have to walk through like housing estates and like blocks of flats to even get to the away end. Yeah, it was a bit strange, but at least it's not one of those modern bowls. At least I guess there's quirks, even though they're a bit weird. I mean, the pubs around there are quite cool though. You know, you can pretty much get in any pub. They allow away fans, pretty friendly. That was quite a good experience. But yeah, all round bizarre. But I'm just glad I've got a little ground tick off.
Very nice. I was going to say, always good to tick one off the list. Let's draw your memories back to 2:00 on Saturday, to the lineup. And it always feels a bit difficult doing lineups these days because we can't exactly get a lot of variation because of the, frankly, shocking number of players we have. But there were a couple of changes from the, let's be honest, humiliating defeat to Leicester, with Traore coming back into the middle of the park and also Semedo coming in for Johnny as well. Matt, were you happy with the starting lineup, all things being equal?
I think so. I think A, it was possibly the lineup that we needed against Leicester anyway, but B, what I was more pleased to see is he's reacted on what was an awful performance from Johnny against Leicester. So he's acted on that and a bit more physicality by having Boubacar in there as well. So pretty much what I expected. Was really pleased that despite being on the, unfortunately having that 4-0 on his only second start, Bueno also made the lineup. So yeah, I think it was the lineup that most people would have been happy with.
Definitely, Michael. How about you? Were you pleasantly surprised? But before the match,
Yeah, I was satisfied sort of when I saw the lineup. I thought, yeah, I agreed. I knew Johnny had to be taken out the firing line following that game against Leicester. I was, to be honest, I was a little bit surprised Hugo Bueno stayed in after Leicester. I didn't think going forward he kept a bad account of himself, but even against Brentford, you can see defensively, certainly the side of his game he has to work on more. And I did expect Ryan Aït-Nouri to come back in there. But yeah, I thought it was a good show of character to give Boubacar Traore a shot. I mean, it was that yellow card, wasn't it, against Crystal Palace that forced his sort of early withdrawal from that, or forced Steve Davis's hand from his perspective a couple of games back. And so I was really excited to get a closer look of him.
Definitely. Dean Marston's said comments, to be fair to Davis, taking injuries and things into consideration, he's got all the lines pretty much spot on. And I'd agree with that, that a lot of it has seemed to be very much square pegs in square holes a lot of the time. And rightly or wrongly, he's tried to keep things as simplistic as possible, which definitely can't blame him for. I mean, going into the game itself, as I kind of started the show by saying, it wasn't necessarily, one for the neutrals. It was a bit scrappy. But Wolves did create a few chances and did look lively at certain points, Kim. What did you kind of make of the sort of, I guess, initial proceedings?
I think we started positively, as we had done pretty much the last couple of games, the first 10 minutes. And you think, okay, at least we're sort of keeping the ball and creating some half chances. But I think the issue is they're still, and I think throughout the game, there were a few chances, but they weren't like clear cut. I think if you'd have looked at the stats, and I don't know what the stats are in terms of like the XG, but I just don't think we're still creating really good clear cut chances. So I think there was a few, weren't there, at the start, sort of João Moutinho, I think he was the first pretty much half chance, where it came onto him, and I think, was it just past the post maybe? And yeah, I think we started well, but I still think it showed in terms of a lack of confidence from the off, really, that the team still tend to have.
I mean, I guess one of the biggest criticisms you could have had against Leicester is that we lacked some of the fundamental basics of what we expect as fans in terms of the desire, the being able to pass the ball 10 yards and things like that. But Matt, do you think we were better at the bare minimum, as it were?
Yeah, I don't think there was any.
I realise that is a very low bar. I realise
it's low hanging fruit, but it's, there were no shouts for that there might have been a competition winner on the pitch for this game. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that. Then again, like those 8 minutes you mentioned against Leicester, we start well in pretty much every game over the last 3-4 games, and we did this game as well. I think Diego Costa missed a header opportunity that came into him. João Moutinho did everything that he could with his volley and a deflection the other way, and that would have gone in. We did the basics right. It's just lacking a killer edge at the moment, and lacking, as we have done for so long, just that lethal hunger striker. There's only so many different ways you can package that any differently. It's same fundamental problems that we have, but what I think was much better on this occasion than it was against Leicester is defensively we weren't looking anywhere near as fragile. Kilman and Collins just had a bit more of they were just more confident, and there was less of this trickery trying to pass the ball out or try and Cruyff turn on the 18-yard line. It was just kind of everything that needed to be done was done efficiently and smoothly, and that's what you needed just to keep yourselves in the game, because that's the first thing for Wolves at the minute. Just don't concede.
I was going to say, you bring up an interesting point, particularly around Kilman and Connors, who did look a lot more themselves. But Michael, do you think having Traore in front of them helped? Because he again gave a busy account of himself, is the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even if it's not him directly, I think the fact he kind of gave Ruben Neves, who tends to be sort of the deepest of the midfield three, a bit more protection in front of him, meant that Ruben Neves, in turn, could then be sort of shielding the back four a little bit more and also offering another pass option, but also so could Traore, who was, all over the pitch. And I'm sure we'll get onto Traore's performance at some point. But there was elements of his inclusion that I think really benefited Wolves from a confidence point of view.
Yeah, I'm starting to become quite a big fan of Traore. What he lacks in a first touch, he makes up for in getting himself about. And I know, Kim, you were never a big fan of Dendoncker, were you?
Yeah, to put it lightly.
Yeah, but is Traore what you wanted Dendoncker to be?
I think he probably complements. He has the attributes that the other midfielders that we have don't. So I think on paper, I think he is what we need, and I think his performance was, albeit at times, I think he gave the ball away a little bit in, when it was just like, make the simple pass. But he was as soon as he gave that ball away, right away, he was really trying to win it back and, putting his foot in and just giving us that energy that I think over the last few years we've really sort of lacked. So yeah, I think I was pretty pleased with his performance, and I think moving into the next couple of games before the World Cup, I think he has to start, because I think it's really showing with Moutinho now that he shouldn't be playing a full 90 minutes in the Premier League every single week. So I think we obviously, providing that Nunes is okay in terms of his injury, then that combination of Neves, Nunes and Traore could actually work really well.
It's got a lot of balance when on paper that trio, and I think all of us on here, plus every Wolves fan, has the utmost respect to João Moutinho. But having someone like Traore in there alongside Neves, alongside Nunes, does feel a bit more balanced, so to say, Matt?
Yeah, I'd say so. And it's cliched in this, and it makes me sound like I'm pining for a Mick McCarthy 11 of just grafters. But you just sometimes want to see passion and heart and having a go. And what he lacks in maybe technical skill, he makes up for in rawness. And we've got to remember as well, he has never played anywhere near this level in his career, and he's adapted to it pretty quickly, I think. And in those games that are 50-50 games, I know prior to this game, I think everybody, myself included, had us down for a shellacking. But when you look on the teams on paper, I think it's a 50-50 game. I think sometimes you just need that extra bit of spark and desire. And that's what he brings. Not that, Moutinho, for example, he's known as being the consummate professional, possibly too passionate in that when he loses, he takes it super seriously and everything else. But you also need the youth and legs underneath it as well to carry that. So I think he's, I wouldn't say he's his first name on the team sheet going forward, but in a game that you need to have that energy and about you, I think, you've got to consider him going forward.
I mean, I think he's done exceptional in the fact that he's played, a handful of games for us. But you're right, he borderline does need to start. And the fact that we've seen young players come into the club and not really get an opportunity. And don't get me wrong, for baseline at the moment for Wolves' performance levels are low. But actually he has shown what, say, as a bare minimum that we expect and what we've needed and what we've missed in the midfield a lot of the time. And don't get me wrong, we rightfully slaughter our attacking players because we don't score. We rightfully slaughter our defenders when we, get spanked 4-0. and the midfielders can sometimes get off a bit lightly within it, and a lot of it is just the fact that for a significant amount of time, I think we've had similar-ish players, and he seems to just be this new element, which is just brand new and exciting, and just lovely new shiny toy. But with Traore, I think he helped break up a lot of play and a lot of momentum with Brentford. And I think that was one of the big overarching things in the game, that it was it was quite a stop-start game, wouldn't you say, Kim?
Yeah, I think, what was the stat? How long was the ball in play? It was a pretty low sort of number, I think.
I believe, was it about 44 minutes or something?
Yeah, and that just sort of summed up the game, really. It was just really stop-start, quite a few sort of injuries, and I suppose it wasn't specific I don't think even it was time wasting. It was just, it was just really stop-start and not really. I guess I don't think Brentford really tested us as much as I thought that they would from going into the game. They're really strong at home and they've beat some really good top 6 teams. And I think it was quite surprising when they seemed pretty content at the end to sort of, hold out for the draw in some sort of sense. But I think considering our away form, I was happy to take the point and run, to be honest. Even though of course we need the 3, and it's obviously the easiest out of the next couple. But I think it's a hard place to go to, so I think take the point and run.
No, definitely. I think reading back through Twitter, both Wolves Twitter and bits of Brentford Twitter that seeped into my timeline, unfortunately, I think there was a lot of criticism directed at the referee. I was going to say rightly or wrongly, it was rightly in my opinion, but not necessarily helping proceedings, whereas you had Brentford sort of saying, oh, Wolves are play acting, they're diving. At the end of the day, I've seen Brentford play quite a few times under Thomas Franks, and it seems to be a repeated theme, if you ask me, Michael, that a lot of their games can be bitty when they want them to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both fixtures last season were dominated. One from Brentford's perspective of time wasting when they had a man sent off. I think it was what's he called? I can't remember the midfielder now. And Baptiste, who got sent off at the game at Molineux, and they held out. And then I think Bruno Lage was unhappy. And then, of course, there was the beautifully sweet revenge at Brentford Stadium in the return leg when there was quite a bit of time wasting going on. Obviously, there was the drone. And I think that this must be one of the fixtures. You talked about those 44 minutes. And I know, let's say you've got to set a minimum of 2 fixtures for the teams played, which of course makes sense given every team in the Premier League that's been in the league at the same season would have played each other twice. But I'd like to see what's the lowest in-ball play time between 2 teams in Premier League history, and I'd like to think Wolves Brentford would be right at the top,
definitely,
and in which way you'd look at it.
Because I know that yesterday's game wasn't the shortest in ball in game time this season. I think it was like second lowest, but I reckon you say like average amongst teams. You'd be harking back to the days of Stoke Wolves. Where I remember a particularly drab, I think it was a nil-nil we had against them. We've had a great comment on YouTube. Big thanks to everyone who's tuned in live, as always, saying Wolves, Brentford, mainly, all championship level. But I enjoyed that, even if it pains me and hurts me. Let's talk about the Brentford goal, Matt, because part of me wants to say, oh, it was a good goal, but a bit preventable.
Yeah, massively preventable. And this is where, when you mentioned about the basics being done incorrectly. Well, this is it. He manages to creep away from a couple of Wolves players, and then he's given the time to like a bicycle kick. Would you quite describe it as? Not quite a bicycle kick, but like a volley, in that he has absolutely no right to be able to pull off. And it's typical Wolves, really, to make a player like me look like prime Ronaldo, isn't it, really? And I'm talking about Brazilian Ronaldo as at that, when really they didn't create a fat lot. They didn't cause Sarr many problems all game, really. And it would just happen to be that the goal of his career was scored against Wolves. And it was entirely preventable, which is annoying, because it's when you're at this point in the season, at this place in the table, minor mistakes cause massive implications. And that's exactly, this is what, you can't say for sure we wouldn't have conceded a different goal in a different capacity and the butterfly effect and blah. But, if we hadn't have conceded and we'd have gone on to score, I've confidently felt we could have seen this one out, because Brentford really didn't cause us that many problems. But it's just one of those.
No, it did feel. So, I think from Brentford's point of view, they'd say, "Oh, that's a really good goal we've conceded." But Kim, would you can't go similar to Matt, that sloppy?
I think there's a couple of things. I think it's typical that we have against us Ben Mee, who, if he's ever going to score, it's usually from his head. I just don't see us ever scoring a goal like that. From our centre backs, and that's probably part of the problem, is that we don't have goals all across the pitch. And two, it's just like, just the best goal of his career again scored against us. So do you think it's preventable? Definitely, as Matt says, but yeah, it is a good goal. So I think if you're watching it as a neutral, you're more likely to think, yeah, that's a really good goal, sort of out of nothing, really, as well. Like, great ball in, and for a centre back to put it in like that, it's one of those things. But it's just how our look is at the moment. Although, to be fair, I think we did look better overall during the game at centre back compared to how we were last week.
I mean, the fact that we kind of very much nullified Ivan Toney and kept him quiet for the majority of the game, I think, indicates of how good a performance that Kilman and Collins had. Michael, what did you think of, I guess, the centre backs? Because don't get me wrong, they were all awful last week, but they did seem to pick up a bit of stride this week.
Yeah, it was a big improvement. I was a bit nervous at the beginning because I think Wolves set a kick-off routine. It went back to Matt Kilman, and he tried to whip a ball out to the right-hand side, and it was so off target. And I was like, "Oh God, this is a sign of things to come." But no, they did pick up. I thought they generally marshalled Toney well. I mean, to be fair, Toney is often a striker who will pop up in certain moments, and in fairness to him, he often still did. And even though he slipped in two of those, I think that was partially due to the pressure around him. What I was really impressed by was that I think what was clear from that Leicester game was that Collins and Kilman needed to take on a bit more of a leadership role in the defensive ranks. And the gaps between Johnny and Bueno and them, they were often left isolated and, outnumbered. And I thought, when Brentford did get into dangerous positions, it was very noticeable that Bueno had tucked in and Semedo had tucked in. And I think that was overall, as a defensive unit, it was just far more solid and far more organised than we'd seen in, obviously Leicester, but also, I guess, in times against Crystal Palace, which wasn't as bad, but obviously Semedo's defending for that Zaha goal.
I think second half, that's literally like a game and a half of football against Palace and Leicester, just for the defence didn't show up. But one of the things that frustrated me most about the Palace game was when we conceded that equaliser to Palace, the heads dropped. And it seems to be a bit of a thing around Wolves this season that they just lack that confidence when they go behind. And one of the most empowering things, I think, from this game, apart from the well-earned point, is the fact that we did pull back an equaliser. It might not have been a win, but the fact that we did get the equaliser, and what a bloody equaliser it was. I know that we can't just rely on Ruben Neves just to score bangers every week, but it ain't half enjoyable, Matt, when they go in, is it?
Yeah, you'd be hard pressed to shoehorn in the Thunder bastard Alan Partridge clip on it. It wasn't quite Thunderbastard territory, but it was a cracker, and well created as well. The funny thing is, my favourite part of this goal isn't necessarily the strike, but it's Boubacar Traore's dancing out of the way of the shot, and but he looks terrified. It's not graceful at all. Just
feel free to write in the anyone who's watching this on YouTube, whether it's live or on repeat, feel free to put in the comments what Ruben Neves shouted to Boubacar Traore at that point, because I don't think it was particularly polite. But
no, I can't imagine it was. The goal itself's beautifully struck, and the reward for some intense pressure straight away from the goal. Frank said in his interview afterwards, the one thing you don't want when you concede, there are red flags everywhere, he said, and that you don't want to concede. It would do so much damage to Brentford's morale as well in the game, conceding straight away like they did. Traore did well as well to control it and get that ball across. I've criticised him a lot, Adama, over this season for being in a position where he either makes the wrong decision or he'll take too long to dilly-dally about making a decision. Well, the fact that he stopped, looked, made the pass, then that pass from, I think, Semedo, a crossover, was just rewards, really, because I think we deserved to be in the game. And what can you say? I mean, it's not probably even one of Ruben Neves' fifth in the top 5 of his goals, and it was still a cracker. And that just proves the talent that he has that, unfortunately, I don't think we'll see for much longer.
No. You mentioned Traore, and I think out of all the players under Davis so far, I think he's been someone who has been quietly actually fairly impressive and seemed to, I was going to say, as much as any Wolves player can do, played actually quite well a lot of the time. But again, Ruben Neves, I think even if you take the goal out of the game, I think he still had another phenomenal performance. Kim, would you say?
I think so. I think firstly, with just going back to Traore for a second, I think he's at least showing a bit of form, and I think sometimes it's a bit unfortunate that, again, even though he's been in and out the team and maybe not once as he has played for us before, I think he's still going to get two players marked on him every game. And that's always going to be a battle for him. But I think he's looking a lot more dangerous. I think he was unlucky to get taken off as well over Podence, because, again, I thought Podence did okay at times, but I always still think that, just like Traore, but to be honest, at the moment, I think Traore is more likely to come up with sort of an assist or a key pass as opposed to Podence. So I thought that was a bit harsh, I think, to take him off. But then another point on Traore, though, if you notice, when we actually did score, he didn't celebrate. So you can, if you watch the goal back, as he sort of sees that it goes in, he just sort of walks off. Whereas if you look at all the other players, they're right to Neves and the fans. So that's just another observation. I still don't think he wants to be here deep down, and maybe, I guess we know that, but
he's too busy concentrating racing kids in Sainsbury's car parks, which I part of me, because I think there's a couple of things that I think I saw on social media this week around Adama Traore, that obviously that clip that went viral of him, leaving some kids for dust in a race in a car park. But I think on the same day or the day before, he was he was just walking around Merry Hill, and people were obviously asking for autographs, but they were he was just waiting for him to run into JD to actually buy Wolves top and stuff like that. So I don't know whether he's going on a mini farewell PR tour or whatever around and helping the young children of the young people of Wolverhampton or whatever.
I think, Rich, on Adama, I think he's going to be as frustrated in his own performances as any Wolves fan here listening or anyone else. I think he expects a lot more from himself, and probably thinks at this point in his career, after the move to Barca and everything, that it was probably on a more upwards trajectory than what he's currently experiencing. And I think that, I don't know if it's, I didn't notice he didn't celebrate, to be fair to Kim, but I don't know if that's an annoyance at his own performance or the team's performance in general, as opposed to his lack of happiness or desire. I don't know. I'm not sure. I think he's a player that I think probably wants and needs to be loved, and I think he's in a team where there's not a lot of positivity at the minute, and I don't know if he's suffering because of that. Maybe, I'm not sure.
An interesting sports dynamic case study, if ever there were one. The only other major incident, and we knew something like this would happen at some point. You bring in Diego for the drama, and he gave us drama. Unfortunately, it was wrong. It was more of a Greek tragedy than anything else. But he did manage to get himself sent off for a headbutt against Brentford's goal scorer Ben Mee. It didn't initially get picked up, and then the lovely people at VAR managed to see it. Michael, what was your initial reaction to this?
My initial reaction when there was a stoppage in play was total excitement, because I thought they were looking at a penalty incident. And it quickly turned a bit sour. And then when they were looking at it, at first I wasn't actually sure who they were looking at, because you do see Ben Mee sort of put his head towards Costa first. Like I'm still confident watching the feedbacks. He does that. Obviously, it's not in the same manner as which Costa's sort of jolted his head a bit more, and it's, it is a red card. It's stupid. It's obviously the kind of stuff he used to do before VAR. If I'm right in thinking, I think he had some limited time playing with VAR in Spain, but he wasn't really involved with Atletico Madrid much. Don't have it in the Brazilian league, as far as I know. So it's one of those things that, a lot of those kind of characteristics that he, used to his success over the years has kind of come back to bite him with the technologies we now use. But yeah, I mean, it's so stupid and annoying given the timing of the match it is. I mean, the timing of the match in short term makes it better because there's a minute left of the game and Brentford don't really have a time to react to that. But long term, that's until Christmas, Boxing Day, that he's out. And when he was just starting to come into a bit of form, I think a lot of the description of his performances has been quite lamented and stuff. But I think there's been game by game improvement, and you can tell he's slow, you can tell he's getting on a bit, but you can also see that his intelligence of knowing when a defender's body's moving one way, when he has that shot at the end, he knows which way to turn and how to create a chance still. And that kind of thing, I think, is offering way more than Jimenez has in the past, 12 months for various reasons. But I think it's such a shame that they're going to lose him for Brighton, which I think is a winnable game. Arsenal, which I don't think is a winnable game, but he's got a good history against Arsenal at the very least. So, yeah, just really disappointing on the whole. But I do think Ben Mee was quite lucky to escape without anything.
Well, yeah, David Price has said in the comments both should have had cards, Ben Mee for the initial headbutt and Costa for the retaliation. I was a bit surprised, because I kind of assumed that Ben Mee must have got a booking. Like, if you've seen the incident, I hate to be unbiased in situations around Wolves, but I do think that what Costa did, I can see why he got the red card and Ben Mee didn't. But the fact that Ben Mee got nothing did surprise me. Kim, I guess it's always a different experience to experience VAR in the stadium, isn't it? But how did you kind of see the incident? Do you think Ben Mee? I don't know.
I think I'm just looking at it from Costa's perspective, and it's just like, why just don't get involved in it? And I think for him to actually come out after the game and apologise shows that if he didn't think he didn't deserve to be sent off, he wouldn't come out and apologise, would he? Agree that, yeah, it is a bit, why would Ben Mee not get a card of some sort as well? But it's just infuriating that we can't afford red cards in our situation, given we've literally got no obvious replacement now. And that's going to cost us because we've literally got no striker now to play until after the World Cup. And as we know, we don't have any options. But yeah, in the ground, you just knew, to be honest, as soon as the ref had to go over to the screen, you just knew what was going to happen, and yeah, from there it was already game over anyway. So yeah.
I'll say we had an interesting point for Twitter Corner from Ash Dolan, which was, am I the only one a little disappointed in Costa rather than pleading innocence, which is funny in itself. He didn't go overboard and sell the headbutt like a Samoan in wrestling, top shit house. But Matt, for you, were you a bit frustrated by it? Because I said, you can't have to buy into Diego Costa, and you get the rough with the smooth that he might do something and get a suspension, but it's because he gives you performances and goals, and we are 5 games in with no goals at the moment. And I know there's attributed factors, but we signed Grant Holt 7 years ago today, who played 4 games for Wolves and scored no goals.
Yeah, I mean, frustrating in the fact that, like Michael said, he was slowly, painfully slowly, but slowly picking up momentum. And on another occasion, he might have scored against Palace when he couldn't get it out of his feet, and it just come at a really bad time. I think what's cute about what Ben Mee's done is he's led in with his back and shoulder, and his head's moved with his body. Whereas Costa has just headbutted with his neck. Like, his body is static and his neck has took his head.
I describe what Ben Mee did as rutting, like a deer.
He was, if this was boxing, he'd be going in with his head as part of a clinch as opposed to a headbutt. But it is frustrating. I think it's a bit of revisionist history to say that Costa has this in his locker, considering I think this is his first Premier League red card, or as I'm led to believe, or
it is his first. It is his first red card. However, I'm pretty sure he has been suspended retrospectively at least once. I think twice.
Okay.
I think he got sent off in the FA Cup once, and then Premier League.
Is that how we're covering ourselves?
Okay. It is frustrating. Call me naive, call me whatever you like. In any negativity, there has to be opportunity, and I think it will give some game time to what I think should be Hwang, believe it or not, because I think that apart from that Newcastle horror show, I don't think in the limited time he's played, he's done too much wrong. I think he deserves an opportunity when Gonçalo's done pretty much nothing when he's been on the pitch. I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world if we gave Hwang an opportunity, not keep him in now for the rest of the season or anything like that. I think you've got to try something because we've got no other choice. Costa's not going to be there.
I was going to say, give Hwang a helping hand. Yeah, again, I'd refer back to my earlier comments in terms of starting lineups. For Steve Davis seems to be very much a square pegs in square holes. He seems pretty set on this 4-3-3 formation, and I don't think he'd feel comfortable playing Guedes as a striker up front by himself, because we've already seen this season it's not a role he's accustomed to. He needs to have someone firing off him. We'll round up Brentford chat by just sort of saying, do you think it was 1 point gained or 2 points lost? Because I do think we're well worth the point, but I know, are we all happy with a point, or do we think we deserved a little bit more?
I thought it was 2 points lost. I think any point at this stage you kind of have to take, but Brentford, I think Ivan Toney or somebody said it after their loss to Villa the week before. When Brentford are a good team, it's a tough place to go, but when Brentford are bad, they're really bad. And I thought they were really bad against Wolves. I thought they really offered very little. The kind of chances they created were more from our kind of lackluster moments than from their kind of ingenuity or anything like that. And I think that they really were there for the taking. They'd had a couple, Janssen came off first half, couple injuries to key players, and I thought they looked really soft in the game. They looked like a team almost wanting to get beat, and we, for numerous reasons that have plagued our season, were unable to capitalise on that.
Kim, how about you? Were you satisfied with a point? I know we sort of said earlier in the show that, happy enough with a point, but part of you?
It's difficult, isn't it? I think a draw was a fair result because I don't think we did enough to win the game. I mean, I think, Brentford weren't great either, but all the opportunities that we created, there were half chances, and I think when you look at the bigger picture, you'd like to say it was 1 point gained, but I can understand sort of the opinions on 2 lost, given the fact that Brentford weren't at their best, and also given what we've got ahead of us. It's the easiest game on paper in comparison to Brighton and Arsenal. So, yeah, but I just don't think we did enough personally to get all 3 points.
Matt, how about you?
I think it was 1 point gained and 2 points lost, only on the basis that I think that wasn't us playing at our best, and we were unlucky not to. And I actually think we could have played better, and we had better opportunity. We could have created better opportunities, and the chances that we did have, we could have took better. But it was a positive step nonetheless. You know what I mean? I wasn't expecting us to win going into it. If we'd have won, I wouldn't have said, "Oh, we really got away with that one." Do you know what I mean? Either. So it's 6-1.5. It doesn't do the other, really. I just think that it was so important. It was so important that we didn't lose. So important, because that really would have felt like a kick in the teeth for what has been a huge improvement over Leicester. But if we took Leicester out of the equation altogether, it was an improvement over the Palace performance as well, in that we could sustain it over a 90-minute period.
Definitely, I think can't be disappointed if it was a point, and I don't know if we quite did enough to win the game and to truly go away. You know what, we should have got 3 points, and how didn't we? But a point on the board, I don't think you can ever complain about, especially considering our form at the moment. We're going to take a short break, guys. After a break, we're going to talk a little bit about Jimenez, a little bit about Lopetegui, and do a little quiz. We will see you in a short second. Catch you in a minute.
Hi, it's Richard from Wolves Fancast here. Just interrupting today's show before we get back to some questionable opinions and opinionated questions. Talk to you a little bit about our sponsors, Pixel Yeti Media. They are a design agency that put you and your business first, from web design, logo and branding design, and marketing. If you have any marketing needs, get in touch with them to find out how they can help you get it right. They are over at pixelyetimedia.com. Now let's get back to a show where we can give you some really forced wordplay, niche cultural references, and maybe even a bit of football talk.
Hello, welcome back everybody. So we're not going to do a long table run through, frankly, because it's depressing, but Wolves are currently 19th with 10 points after 13 games. But one thing I think is most notable, that we are a decent chunk into the season, but it is still quite tight at the bottom of the table. Most exemplified by Leeds, who, of course, beat Liverpool, but they've shot up from, being below us in the table all the way up to 15th. So with my positive hat on, I'm not getting super, super anxious, but obviously we are still in fairly dire straits. But hopefully we can somehow manage to get a few points out of, Brighton, who beat Chelsea, and Arsenal, who are near the top of the table. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit about Raul Jimenez, guys, because he's not been in England the past few weeks. Essentially, since the last international break, he hasn't returned following a groin injury that he's apparently sustained for a significant while now. But given, I guess, the optics around Wolves, Matt, do you think it's not been a great move to have him still out there rather than sort of being back at Compton, or does it really not matter because he's recovering from an injury?
Yeah, I think for the purposes of the team and his rehabilitation, I don't think it makes much of a difference, if I'm honest. But as with everything on social media, the truth isn't what's most important. The perception is what's most important. And the perception is a filthy skiver, as Twitter would have you believe. I think the whole thing's blown out of proportion, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, how often do players go off to see specialists in other countries when, Traore would have an injury, he would fly back to Spain, or I don't think it's as huge a deal as we think. I think that because of if we were sitting in 12th having a really mediocre season of draws and the occasional win and the occasional loss, this wouldn't make headlines at all. It's because of the position that we're in the table that it causes today's Twitter meltdown. And tomorrow's Twitter meltdown will be that Bueno, I don't know, puts his tomato sauce in the fridge. You know what I mean? It's one of these things. It doesn't make a difference, but it's just it's amplified by social media because of where we are at the moment. So I don't think it's a big deal.
I mean, Kim, I know you're someone who's been on holiday to Mexico, so you'll have. I assume you'll realise that actually a lot of people go, oh well, clearly he's just there sunning it, he's just lounging it about. But is this the footballing equivalent from, I guess, a fan's perspective, where an organisation isn't necessarily performing as well as they should do? So, and you've all been doing a lot of working from home, a lot of hybrid stuff, and they've pulled everyone back into the office. Is that what that's what we're demanding as fans? We're hard-earned money.
I think it has been like pulled out of proportion a little bit, but I do think there's probably more to it in terms of than the injury. I mean, you obviously read different reports on what's happening, and is it he's struggling with the injury plus sort of mentally. I mean, we can just speculate, can't we? We don't know that. It might be that he just needed a change of scenery and going back to where he's actually from. I don't think people should be getting on his back or making comments when technically we don't really know what's happening. But he ultimately had a really career threatening injury, so I think we've got to be I think we've got to be careful on what we say. It's a difficult one, isn't it? It's a difficult one to sort of put your finger on until we actually know. But where's his family? Like, are they still in England, or have they gone back to Mexico with him? As I say, we don't know. So it's just a shame that he's not back on the pitch. And hopefully after the World Cup, he will be, and we'll have him as an option.
Definitely, I think that's from our perspective as fans. That's all we want. I think that's arguably the most frustrating thing, is that we're severely lacking goals. We as Wolves fans have seen him, particularly pre-injury, be that focal point and be the player who consistently gets us goals. And it's the thing we are literally missing in this team. And when you sort of see him not on the pitch and struggling. But I think I read the same article I think you're referring to, Kim, about sort of relating to the mental side, and it reminded me, there's an American football player, Andrew Luck, who went through a couple of really serious injuries, not quite to the extreme of a fractured skull, but he ended up retiring on basically getting a sprained ankle because he kind of decided, I'm not doing the rehab again. I'm not going through, essentially about an 8 to 12 week injury process of returning, and just didn't fancy it. But I guess, Michael, for yourself, I mean, how important is it for Jimenez to get back playing for Wolves? Because there have been rumours flying about, but it doesn't look particularly likely that he's going to be playing in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think trying to get him back in terms of looking for a plan, especially with Costa's absence, of how Wolves plan around that, I think Jimenez should be at the bottom of the priority list. I think, with all due respect to ourselves, that Jimenez, he's idolised in Mexico, and they've got a World Cup on the horizon, and what I think will most likely, even though he's not the oldest player in the world, but I think will most likely be Jimenez's last. And given his form between the last World Cup and this one, at the very least deserves that chance. I think if he can go to the World Cup and there's no pressure from our side to allow him to, and maybe have a really big moment for Mexico in the World Cup, I think you kind of have to hope that will be able to radiate and sort of result in a bounce for Jimenez coming back to Wolves, because otherwise I think if you try and rush him in back before the World Cup, affects his fitness before the World Cup, doesn't have a disappointing World Cup, that can so easily just sort of build a negative reception and maybe reaction from Jimenez towards the club. And I think if anything, the club kind of needs to put it, given especially what he's been through, I think he's within his full, I'm not always saying sort of, a club should bend over backwards for a player's needs, but I think Jimenez's case is very different. And I think the club in this scenario, given there is only 2 weeks before the World Cup, should be taken into account what the players' priorities are right now. And as much as we like to think, a Wolves should always be a player's priority, World Cup's every player's dream, isn't it? And I think that should be respected in that sense. And the club should kind of work. They should all hopefully. Then I think they are, by the sounds of it, they're working together to try and get him ready for that World Cup. And hopefully, if he has a good one, it'll work for Wolves going forwards.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel like he's. I think people make it sound sometimes like he's gone MIA and like he's just gone. Sorry, I can't come on the plane. I've pulled my groin. I'm just gonna have to go to the beach instead. But yeah, fingers crossed. We can see him back on a pitch in no time, because even if he isn't fit enough for the next couple of weeks, if he's fit enough to play in the World Cup, it'll still be nice to sort of see him play on the main stage of what's arguably going to be his last international tournament by the way things are shaping up. The only other little bit of tidbit, again, it drags on and on and on, but Wolves are apparently still in for Lopetegui. I mean, I'm not going to do a whole big thing on it, but Matt, what are the chances are he's actually going to be on manager, let's say post-World Cup?
It's a tough one, because everybody, says, well, it all depends on the health of his father and everything else. But again, you read into that what you will. If that was the case and that was the overriding factor, why did he interview? And there's all this to and fro. Do I think he'll be the manager come the end of the World Cup? No, I don't. I think this is one of those in another life we could have rolled the dice kind of things. I don't think it's ever going to happen. And if, like Pacquiao Mayweather, if it does happen, it will be about 3 to 5 years too late. I don't think at this point in both parties' careers, it's probably in their best interests now. I think from Wolves' point of view, I'm not saying we need a do or die Sam Allardyce or anything like that, but I think we need somebody that perhaps has a bit more of a get out of the trenches mentality than someone that's going to set us up for a future of potential European football. So I don't think he'll be the manager come the end of the World Cup.
No, I think only time will tell. I saw it pop up today. It's like he must be getting sick of the texts he's getting from Jeff. Is all I'm thinking. A couple of nice comments I've seen on our YouTube YouTube viewers. Big thanks. Is we're such vultures and we should move on. And it doesn't feel like we've got a plan at the moment still, and it is dicey. And in a way, I'd almost cope if he signed a pre-contract agreement to start on X date. 1st of January, but only time will tell. Now, Matthew, when I mentioned to you earlier today that I was like, we're going to do a quiz, your reaction was less than
positive.
Yeah. Now, I am no corporate shill. I will bow down to no one apart from for Wolves Partners quiz. Because when you're short on content, why not go through a quiz? So, guys, it's really simple. I've got 5 questions based around Wolves Partners in the club, because I'm of all things in football, I'm really fascinated by the whole new partners
Like
club
this
that
is
does-
Wolves. This is Wolves' official cottage cheese partner.
Yes,
That kind of thing,
fascinated.
right.
I'm fascinated by the commercialisation of football sponsorship because I just think it's bizarre. You know, our official donut sponsor, our Nigerian energy drink sponsor, and things like that. I think it's I don't think it's wonderful in the moralistic sense, but I do just find it incredibly interesting to see how they're sort of juggling these. So, 5 questions for you guys. Now, AstroPay is the club's principal partner, but who are Wolves' 3 main partners?
Angel Energy. Are they one of them? Angel something or another?
They are not.
Oh, okay.
One of them is actually pretty easy.
I guess, focus on themselves.
I think they own at least one of the 3. Do you want me to tell you guys?
Oh, is one Thomas Cook? No.
I guess the
No,
church.
but nearly. You're on the right trail of foot, right?
Like this. No, not the Sunning Holding. No, that's someone else, isn't it? I don't have a clue.
I feel like we're not going to get it.
No.
So here are the 3 main sponsors according to their website. I must say. So it's Castor, Royal Caribbean International, and 12Bet.
How did they skirt
That's
around?
even on the shirt.
Caribbean International's always at Molyneux, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They sponsor the training kit as well. I think Royal Caribbean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Wolves' global IT partner is Arctic Wolf. But are there more estimated Arctic wolves in the wild or people living in Wolverhampton?
Ooh.
Arctic wolves. I feel like they can cover the whole sort of top of the northern hemisphere.
I think you've got
people.
like.
I think people. People in
Yeah,
Wolverhampton.
I'm going for Arctic wolves on the basis that you've got all of like Russia and Mongolia and all huge swathes of land that are unhospitable for man. So I'm going for wolves themselves.
Big shout out for people in the comments who are just like commenting on people or wolves at the moment. This is exactly what I live for on a Sunday night. I'm not gonna lie. The correct answer is people. So there's an estimated 200,000 Arctic wolves and around 260 people in Wolverhampton. So next up, suit specialist House of Cavani recently became a sponsor / partner. But how many clubs has Edison Cavani played for in his career?
I'll go for one in Uruguay. Palermo, Napoli, PSG, Man United. I'd go 6.
I'll go 7. I hope he's forgotten someone.
I think it's 7 as well.
In hindsight, when I thought of this quiz, I forgot that we're having someone who does a European football podcast on the show. The correct answer is 6. So he did start off at a Uruguayan club. You are completely right, Michael. Danubio, then Palermo, then a loan spell at Napoli, then made permanently, then PSG, then United, Manchester United, and then Valencia. I'll say that my only tidbit of this is you look at his goal scoring record compared to everywhere else apart from Man United. Like he phenomenally good player. Number 4, Cadbury, a Wolves partner, are technically the shirt sponsor of Notts County. I say technically because they donated it. They are the shirt sponsor and they donated it to a local organisation. But which current England international played for Notts County the last time they played Wolves?
Oh, God, I was there as well, I think. Well,
was it the penalty shoot? Well, the season we got promoted from League One.
It was, I believe, if I can remember off the top of my head, the 15th of February 2014.
Yeah, there was 2K away fans and about 2K home fans. I remember it well.
I believe it was at Molyneux.
Was this a Johnson's Paint game or was it just a league match?
It was a league match.
Current England international.
So it's got to be someone who's fairly getting on in their career.
Or like one of the younger ones who's had
it's-
loan spells.
Yeah, I don't know.
We got any stabs in the dark, or shall I reveal all?
I've got a couple in
Jared Bowen.
No, but somebody...
Ben White.
Oh. Good guesses, but you're both wrong. And someone actually has got it in the comments. It's Jack Grealish.
Oh God, yeah.
Look at that
I do
hair.
remember him playing for them now, but
Yeah.
not against us.
Yeah, I have no memory of him actually playing at Notts County, but yeah, it was the same time we're in League One. Right, last two questions. Oh no, last question even. I tell a complete lie. No, it isn't. No, I've just wrote down the wrong number. Sorry guys. So Tile Choice is a sponsor of a family enclosure. Are there more Tile Choice stores or Wolves players out on loan?
Ooh, I think there are more Wolves players out on loan.
Agree. It's got to be. Must be. There's
Stores or loans. Feel free to give your thoughts.
I'll go with stores just because everyone else has gone loans, but I've never seen a Tile Choice in my life. So yeah.
and there's got to be about 50 players out on loan.
Wow. There are, according to Tile Choice's website, again, for any of your Tile Choice needs. And if you are interested in having an official collaboration with Wolves Fancast, you can feel free to contact us on podcast at wolvesfancast.com. 18 Tile Choice stores, but 20 players out on loan.
There we go.
Yeah.
It's funny when you look at this list and there's a couple of players that you just never recognise in the slightest.
Oh yeah. I mean, some of I initially went on Wikipedia and then found actually there's an official list on the Wolves website, and Wikipedia didn't include some of the players on there because they are somewhat more obscure. But like even some, we've got a couple of the Visualic lads on there,
And interestingly, a couple of them could probably improve our first team now on the list.
Wow.
I'm not going to say who they are. Leave that to you, imagination.
I was going to say I happily could, to be honest. Okay, so the last question, which hasn't pulled through on here. I think that was the last question. I think for some reason it's not pulled out one for questions. But Matt, was that up to your standards of quizzing?
It was more than acceptable, as I do love an obscure and tenuous link at the best of times when it comes to quizzes. So it's right up my street.
I was going to say, is there any point of doing a quiz if it's not tenuous?
Exactly. The only thing I thought that might have been different is that you were going to do some kind of a Halloween-based one. But then, apart from like John DeWolf, like where do you go with it?
See, from this, Matt, I'm now going to spend the rest of the evening thinking of really forced Halloween puns. I was going to say, I feel like that's a proper radio show trope, isn't it? Where you're running out of content, it's a slow news day, you just run a pun.
Exactly.
So, a couple of questions from Twitter Corner just to finish things off. Big thanks to everyone who contributed as always. First up, Martin at Clive Wolves says, having watched the excellent Welcome to Wrexham documentary series, I was wondering which telly/movie star duo would you most like to see by Wolves?
Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant. I don't know who would be Jeff Sheehan, or like if they would do their own mockumentary of Wolves' negotiations in the past year, but you could probably make something pretty good out of that.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I think that wouldn't be I mean, prior to this game, how I was feeling about Wolves, it probably would have been Fred and Rose West, just to put me out of my misery. But at this point,
telly stars?
Well, they're famous on television, I suppose. But I think at this point in time, Vic and Bob, Shooting Stars fame, would at least give me the most entertainment to see what their halftime entertainment would have been.
Kim, where's your... So I had a couple of ideas. Again, if you'd have asked me last week, I'd have probably gone very much comedy duo with it and gone, it should be like Morecambe and Wise or something like that. But I don't know. Part of me thinks do we go serious? And I feel like if our owners were Brad Pitt and George Clooney, I'd be having a bit of that. No? Do you go? Or am I just thinking they'd just be running a weird con?
Yeah, I'd worry that we were going down kind of like a
would-
Scientology route with the club
Yeah,
or something like that.
Kim, how about you? What movie stars, TV stars would you like to see take over Wolves? Apparently keeps dropping off, unfortunately, so we'll never find out. Again, we didn't quite touch upon it in the show itself, but obviously we've got Costa out for the next couple of games. But who would you like to see play at centre forward against Brighton? Guedes should be the answer, but I'm pretty sure if you did a poll between him, Wang, and Campbell, he'd come last. Such disappointment at the moment. I guess really quickly, guys, Michael and Matt, who are you both wanging for Wang?
I am, but I could probably be quite easily be persuaded otherwise. So I'll turn it over to Michael on this one, as I had my say earlier.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely not Wang. I don't think he's done anything to convince me in the last few months. I'd go Guedes. The other one who I do think is quite interesting that's not been talked about and hasn't, from what I know, hasn't really trained with the first team, but is meant to be one of our brightest new youth prospects is Nathan Fraser, who's proper old-fashioned number 9 in terms of his sort of physicality, and he's quite a tall, powerful striker, especially at his age group. Whether that would translate into senior football, I don't know. But I mean, if he's probably, which is concerning, you think under 23s, under 18s, etc. Maybe the only natural centre forward we really have at the moment. But out of those three, Gonçalo Guedes any day. I think give him a run of games, see what he can do before the World Cup. Can he even force himself into World Cup contention with Portugal? Unlikely, but you never know with injuries and stuff. So I think there'd really be something to play for there. And easy choice for me.
I'm slightly scared to say Kim because the last 3 times I've said, Kim, what do you think?
I think I'm alive now. Yeah, I think I'm here. I'd agree with Matt actually. I think, and I can't believe I'm saying it because, to be honest, I haven't been Wang's biggest fan either. But he hasn't had much football lately, and yeah, I feel like we've not got that many other choices. I think we all know that Podence definitely is possibly the worst choice to play up top, considering he's smaller than me. So, and Guedes just hasn't impressed me. When he sort of played the I don't know, he hasn't played the lone striker, but he's almost played sort of off the striker. I think there isn't many options, and I'd just stick with Wang and give him a chance at least. Give him a couple of games just to see what he can do, and maybe play Guedes off him. I don't know, but I just can't. We just haven't got any other choices, so I'm sticking with Wang up top.
Yeah, I'm more on Wang boat just because I think he's more of a natural attacking player or more of a striker than Guedes is at this moment. It is a bit rock and a hard place though, unfortunately. And finally from Todd, is this week we've all given up on FPL. Kim, as our resident FPL queen, have you found this
definitely
week?
not a queen at the moment in the FPL sense. So I had Saka and felt pretty as captain, which is pretty much a differential captain this week, and I was feeling pretty good when he got an assist in the first 2 minutes of the game, and then obviously came off injured. So yeah, it's really annoying. Pep Roulette is doing my head in as well with Foden benched. But I did get a double Palace clean sheet, which it's quite a nice few points for me.
I've actually fairly tried in FPL this year as opposed to other years, but for some reason never played Haaland throughout the first 14 games of 13 games of the season. But average score this week, 47. I'm on 66 points, so everything's
really?
coming up Millhouse over here. Yeah, so I'm still persevering. The one which has really annoyed me, and I'm not speaking to the right crowd on here. I managed to forget to change my NFL fantasy football team, and had my quarterback on as a bye, which was it. But Michael, are you an FPLer?
Yeah, I must join your league, but no, I had a good defense, and then I had armor on and Erdegaard, but then the sort of my most expensive 3 midfielders and 2 attackers contributed, I think, 8 points. So that's left me just around the average mark.
Yeah, I think I felt the pain a bit because I had Kane and Son, and who contributed 3 points between them. But Matt, I cannot remember off the top of my head how emotionally invested you are in terms of fantasy football.
Not very. I once again I created a team, but when her late Majesty passed away, I stopped playing, not for any sense of poignancy or out of respect for the Queen's passing. When the games were cancelled, I just forgot. And then I'm one of these people, I forget for 1 week and I just think it's all over. I haven't made a transfer for about 4 or 5 game weeks. So I could be doing really well. I don't know. I haven't checked. I might just see how I am at the end of the season and if I'm ahead of anybody, never let them forget it for the rest of time.
See, now
I had a decent like base at first, but then I had Kilman in, so I don't know what that would have done against Leicester. So
yeah,
you've got 3 players who are injured. The one guy who's retired, the guy who's retired from Brighton, still in. There you go.
You're probably still above me in the league.
There we go. That says it all.
As I say, yes, I've crept above you, according to this. But genuinely, I have about 6 points more than you according to our league table, Matt, which you've done fuck all for several weeks. I think on that slightly depressing note for me, that's a good point to end the show. Big thank you to everyone who's tuned in and watched live, and everyone who's listened to us on podcasts. Your support is much loved and immeasurable. We'll be back to preview the upcoming Brighton match. Make sure you keep up to date with all things Fancast at Wolves Fancast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Make sure you've liked, shared, and subscribed as well. Until next time, though, it's goodbye from Kim.
Keep the faith.
It's goodbye from Matt.
Take it easy, everybody.
Michael, big thanks for joining us. Again, do you want a quick plug for your things as well?
Yeah, thanks for having me. If anyone wants to listen to any European football, we do a podcast at RTN Football, a fortnightly episode.
Fantastic. It's goodbye from me, guys. See you next time.